Or did you say great?
Okay, so I just handed out a spreadsheet that we can walk through briefly. When we called for the special meeting at last Board of Ed meeting, our budget allocation was different than what it was today. So these adjustments reflect the change that has been made since then. The initial allocation was the $3 million that you see at the top of the page. After our meeting, the town had made a medical guarantee for our budget, so they're advising us to flatline our medical line, and we'll provide written documentation to guarantee anything over that dollar amount they will fund dollar for dollar. So that frees up roughly $3.1 million in our budget request. So we've had many scenarios that were floating around based on scenarios of the money that we were and were not getting, many of which were causing some concern, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to come here tonight at that point in time. Now that that has changed, there is an adjusted budget changes that we would make to fulfill the $2 million hole that we need to fill based on the updated funding. We can walk through them. These are very more straightforward, more in line with past reductions. Still achieving the $2 million gap with hopefully the least resistance to people. The first is, you were aware in our requested budget, there were new positions that were requested from our leaders. Based on the reduced funding, we will not be able to fund those positions to the amount of $240,000. Subsequently, there was also a Chromebook tech lease for $200,000, which was going to start the regeneration of new Chromebooks for our students over a 5-year plan. That will now get pushed out a year, and we will assess the ratio of Chromebooks at the younger grade levels to see if we can gather some of those to achieve the same solution of repurposing them through the older grades. Excess cost. The state has passed some legislation for additional funding for this fiscal year, although not entirely what we were shorted. It gets us just shy of $500,000, so I'm hopeful that we will receive that funding again for next year, and it can include that in our updated model for special education. There will be some adjustments to the administration level of the district, equating to the $122,000. A couple of our coaches have retired, and we will absorb savings of the $205,000 there without replacing. We will examine our stipends going from school-wide to sports to assess the levels of participation to ensure that we are funding the positions that are for the clubs and sports that are actively participated in. We have 3 retirements that we are aware of at this time that we will not be filling. Those 3, I believe, are all at the high school level. We assessed adult ed with Gene, and we're able to find $100,000 savings in our portion of the adult ed piece. Again, adult ed is a 45-55% grant split. We pick up the 45%, they pick up the 55% through grants, so the $100,000 absorbed was through our portion of that grant. So the total cut was upwards of closer to $250,000, $300,000. So that was a larger savings there. But the increased funding that we are receiving for seats at Overbrook, we will be able to absorb 1 more staff into the Overbrook grant. I think I died. Yep. You guys still hear me?
Yeah.
No. Okay. I almost made it. So the Overbrook will be able to absorb 1 more staff from the operational budget based on the increased funding that we are just currently receiving projections for. And then there are staffing changes currently that we are assessing There are some rumblings of retirements that we are not aware of. And based on that happening or not happening, we will reassess some staffing areas where we can adjust accordingly. But being a month and a half out from when the actual budget is due here for approval, it wasn't prudent for us to make fine cut decisions based on that. So more to come based on what comes from there.
What positions make up the 240,000?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
In the staffing changes?
In the top.
The requested,
Oh,
requested.
The ones that we had
The
asked
new
for
ones.
that can't be
I
filled
got
now.
you. Give me one sec. So, I believe it was 1.5 FTE of social workers and 2 FTEs of special education teachers.
So I have a big problem with the social worker position because it's been grossly inequitable with the academy only having the .5.
Correct.
That has to be corrected.
So I believe instead of additional funding for that, any savings that are made up through the summer will be redistributed to those positions.
I mean, I
rather
know
than
right
a new
now
FTE.
it hasn't been filled,
Correct.
but that can't go on another year. That's been going on for the last 5 years. So if someone has to be moved from another school, it has to be more equitable. I mean, we have, some schools have 2 social workers and the academy has .5. It's just not equitable. We have to do something about
Especially
that.
given the large range of ages as well, having the
Yeah,
.5 there is not
there's
doing
kids
it
not getting
across the
services
board.
that they need.
So I also then asked, what retirements are not being filled?
So the 3 currently at the high school, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, it is a Spanish, an English, and social studies, currently. Correct?
Just the high school?
Currently, yes.
And coaching attrition. We're going to be just phasing out coaches for specific sports?
No, that's coaching, educational coaches.
Oh,
Adam,
okay.
can you explain a little?
Have a retirement. And
2.
Yeah, so 2 positions.
Vacant.
Be vacant at the elementary level.
So how will that work?
Specifics would be forthcoming, but we'll be taking a look at an equitable distribution based off of need side by side. I think there's an opportunity with some of the groundwork we've been laying, both in literacy and math, to just reevaluate how coaches are distributed.
Okay. And interventionists, are they part of that?
No,
Are we keeping interventionists?
at this point, yes.
Okay.
Again, this is very fluid, it could change as more information comes to us and, people resign or decide to retire or, things happen, so this is very general. We'll get more detailed and specific over the next month and a half, 2 months prior to bringing the final version back to the board for approval.
And then I just have a question, stipends. That has to be a lot of positions to make up
Yes.
50,000 because they're not,
Yes,
they
they're
don't make,
small.
stipends are not a lot, so
No.
what are we cutting? What programming?
So I think it's going to be, again, across some athletic sports that we have teams that have never played before, and we're fielding a team just to field a team. That alone is like a $10,000 because you're getting the coach, you get the transportation that comes along with it. There are clubs at the high school who may only have 1 or 2 participants after school.
We're doing a website redesign. so
Yeah, there's a
some
bunch that
master
equate to-
applications and We looked at those where the participation is significantly low and/or, you have to actually recruit kids to build a team, to actually have.
We'll just eliminate the sports entirely.
Which sports are we talking
No,
about?
not all
No.
sports, but certain
No.
sports, we're just going to.
Yeah, we're
Potentially.
working with Anthony to help us identify some of those sports. There's some, there's a team right now that requires 9 players on the field and there's only 10 kids participating, 2 of whom are maybe on several might be on academic probation. that is a place where if you're not getting the participation for the sport, we're paying, you know, a head coach, an assistant coach, the transportation, all of the equipment and the supplies and the time and, you know, may require some custodial overtime if you have a home game and the building's open. So we're asking Anthony to really be strategic and thoughtful in how he looks at that based on participation. We have 90 kids going out for a track team, we're not cutting track, right? That would be absolutely absurd. But you have 4 kids who are trying out and you're trying to recruit 3 more so you can actually have a team, you may need to reevaluate that a little bit. None of whom have actually played the sport before. So there's a lot of reevaluating going on.
In middle school sports?
Again, it could be middle school and high school, based on participation, based on information that Anthony shares relative to the team.
Will we get those specifics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So when we talk about the requested positions and positions that are not going to be filled again, where are we with like the state mandates for like special ed and things like that?
That will be in full compliance.
So we're okay.
Yep. Well, with the exception of the ratio of administration to the number of teachers, that we are not in compliance for, based on the elimination of the 2 special ed positions last year. But relative to students and supports for students, in compliance.
What's the result of not being compliant to what the state guidelines are?
A letter saying to being compliant.
The letter you received today.
How many special ed teachers was in that amount? 2?
2 recent.
Yes,
It was 2? So
There was
that's,
2.
that's a concern,
there's 2.
because I worry about caseloads and hours.
'Cause we had
Bob,
to make
are
the
you
cuts
worried
last
about
year.
that?
I would be foolish to say no, but I think we also have to think about how we service those students with both special education teachers and content area specialists.
Before PPTs happen? At the, yeah, that's going to be important, how those annual reports are written up.
The grid page, yes.
Just as a little history, we are doing like a little bit of a data dig, and as we get more into the science of reading, becoming masters of teaching reading and understanding the appropriate sequence of instruction that has to happen for kids to get foundational skills to be successful readers, fluently, but also in terms of, you know, comprehension. There may be some opportunity for content area specialists or interventionists who are trained in the science of reading to provide the hours on the IEP outside of the special education teacher, who may be able to act in some cases more as a case manager. And so we are we're trying a little pilot and taking a little data dive there.
Which in some ways can be way more effective.
Yes, absolutely. So that is a current investigation that we're conducting. We're not through the data or the analysis, but we will be able to share more as we gather more information and plan accordingly for that.
Also, the way class lists are developed, you have to be pretty creative when you have 8 grades and where you place students, because they can't be scattered in 4 different classrooms because it's impossible to push in. You don't have the hours.
Adam's done an excellent job. These 2 positions were at the elementary level, but he's done an excellent job working with principals on schedules
Yep.
to maximize time and the space for which students can receive services. And there was a lot more coherence amongst elementary schedules in that regard this year.
That's
So
good.
that's a valid point.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, no, I mentioned administration.
Administration.
Yes, the reduction of an administrator.
At what level?
It's based on seniority, so we have to go through the seniority list.
What does that cause?
again, we're working through the ripping language and the seniority clause in the contract, and we can get more specific with you in the future.
Because it would be union positions,
Yeah.
right, so we have to.
And they fall in different classifications, and obviously your tenure in district matters, so I don't have an answer for you at this moment, but there is a reduction of administrative
Is
fees.
there not like a time period that people need to be notified by?
There are.
Something like
Yep.
that? Okay.
Yep.
I know
Yes.
there is, but I'm just,
Yeah. Yep.
I'm sure.
You know, we also need to know like a general sense of how supportive the board is of this, because I don't want to have a conversation with somebody if that's not going to be something that the board approves. And generally, the board doesn't approve the budget until May.
Right.
So that's why this meeting is important, to sort of put some things in front of you and get a sense of, you know, where we may land, so we can start preparing and having appropriate conversations.
I think I have some questions about staffing changes because that's so vague.
It is, yep. RJ, will you repeat what you stated initially when you went over that line?
Yeah, so without getting into specific areas to cause mass hysteria,
Oh, okay.
there are rumblings of retirements that we haven't received any documentation for yet. Many people have expressed intent to everyone but the business office.
Fair.
So if those happen, we would go through the process of seeing if we can do without replacing. And if not, we have a few scenarios of staff that we would look to potentially reduce hours, reduce levels of staffing, the number in the position, get rid of it altogether based on.
This also could be, you know, we do have some resignations in district, and if
Yeah.
you hire somebody at a lower level, so that sort of staffing change does sort of include that. You know, it's a hard thing to predict, but we do have some potential possibilities.
I think, I mean, I know we have to reduce, we have to, but
It's hard
when
to
it
give opinions
impacts
on
the kids
specifics when you
is when
don't have it.
I get really, you know, I worry about it. Like the special ed teachers, that's worrisome, and not knowing what these other positions are and how it's going to impact kids, it's hard to wrap your brain around it.
You know, when you say you're reducing like an administration position, I imagine there could be shifting to put people where they appropriately need to be to get coverage. I'm just not clear on how we could reduce that position and still have all buildings covered. I don't know if that's a good way of putting it.
Which position are you talking about?
Administration,
Oh,
getting rid of an administrator.
all buildings will be covered.
I think, you know, all of these are reductions in FTEs in addition to the 21 we did last year. So even though it is staffing and it may not be, it is through attrition, it still increases the workload for the remaining staff.
Which impacts the kids.
The administration, yes, this position will require an increased workload for other admins to pick up the slack, but seems to be the lay of the land.
Can you break down the excess cost a little bit more? I'm not.
Sure.
really
Len, I
clear
have
on
a
what
sheet.
that half
Len.
million is for.
Len? So excess costs, we received notification early February that the state was not fully funding the excess cost. So they told us that they were reducing our allocated amount by 36%, which just shy of $1 million for this fiscal year. So when we prepared this budget, we were very conservative in allocating for that reduced amount to not over budget. Since then, there have been a couple bills that have been proposed that would increase the funding for this fiscal year. One of which I believe that passed was for $40 million.
Special ed, right?
What's up?
Special ed, right?
Special ed, correct. So when that allocation came out, we are to receive $499,000 of that $40 million. It's just waiting to be approved and signed. And the intent is that at a minimum would be added to next year's excess cost funding, which is why the 500 is here.
And excess cost funding, just to be clear, is anything above and beyond what we've allocated funds for?
So the state, we determine a per pupil expenditure for special education. I believe ours is around $86,000, Bob?
Yep.
86-ish. So any student whose costs are above $86,000, we submit for excess costs and receive a percentage of that back from the state of Connecticut.
Percentage of a percentage.
How
Correct.
does this balance out the new stipulations for special ed from the state?
Not at all.
Not
Not at all.
at all.
No.
That was,
The mandates far outweigh the increase. This increase, let's put it this way, this increase is still a net decrease for excess cost in totality, right? Receiving 36% less equated to just shy of $1 million for us. If we were to receive our full allotment, we'd be getting, I believe, $2.3 million.
and then we'd still be able to keep the 2 FTEs.
We
Yeah.
typically receive between 84 and 87%.
Correct. And then they reduced that 84 allocation by 36% in February.
Do you have any idea of how the reduction in staff would affect class sizes?
Not,
There's no,
there's no classroom teachers impacted on this
Correct.
list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Except the ones not being
Provided we
replaced,
don't
right?
have a huge
Right.
spike in enrollment, minimally.
Okay.
the three that are retiring through attrition at the high school level
Or
would,
at the high school.
they would
Also usually an influx just in the beginning of the year,
It
then
would-
like dissipate.
affect the course offerings more than the classroom size, correct?
So we won't be running, classes of 8,
Yeah,
classes of,
right,
right.
classes of 10, right? And so we'll have to make some decisions around that, specific to electives. That's why we ask kids to pick first choices, second choices, and third choices.
So we're gonna potentially have to limit some electives.
Yeah.
Not core, well, it wouldn't be core classes, of course,
Right.
but electives.
Like, I think Lisa said there was 6 kids or 4 kids in Spanish honors 4. So, this year.
Is there a regular Spanish they could go into?
We-
Not a Spanish course. If we cut that section because of numbers, then we wouldn't be offering that class.
But couldn't they take it through dual enrollment at one of the universities or colleges we partner with?
Yes.
They can take it on site if that.
Yeah, or online?
Yep.
Okay. Just thinking of options that,
Lisa has a meeting next week with the high school team to take a look at course selection and enrollments, to make some of those determinations. And also, I was going to crash their meeting and also ask and make some suggestions or strategize around the possibility of offering like a Spanish 4-5 combination. I don't know if that's possible, but would there be an opportunity to shape something like that? So there's some ideas we are still throwing out on the table. And as you know, we'll work as hard as we possibly can to maintain as many possible courses as we can without taxing the budget fiscally and running classes with, 5, 6 kids.
that makes sense. It's just, can't be done at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
Erica, what were you saying about changing the website up?
Oh, yeah, we're working on a new website right now, through Parent Square, thank you, Smart Sites. I was searching for the Smart Sites board. Through Parent Square, we have a mock-up right now. We're building common web templates for each one of the schools and the departments, and building the content. We're being very thoughtful and strategic about the information we're bringing over to make sure that it's not so massive, people can't find anything, yet it's tangible and relevant to what they're looking for. And so, because we're streamlining it so much, we may not need webmasters. We may be able to manage the small amount of content that will change for each school internally amongst our
So this will
administrative
replace
team.
the current pages that we have
Correct.
for the schools.
Yeah.
Historically, has that always been managed through the Board of Ed as opposed to town? Does the
Say that
town
again?
handle the website ever? No, they have no
No,
control
we
over
do
it, right?
internally, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Should let the students intern.
right?
Yeah, we can. We're
I bet
trying
they
to
would
keep
get it
it.
done so
What
fast.
happens is
Well,
when
we
you
can
have
give
a
credit
lot
rather
of.
than a salary. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just-
Well, it's the stipend, it's not a salary, but when you have a lot of hands on it, it tends to get very loose and then you lose formatting. And if you're a parent with kids and sometimes we have parents with kids in 3 or 4 schools, like, it's hard to go from website to website looking for something and it not be in the same place. So we're looking for a little standardization, and then once we build that and we're comfortable with it, we could look into accessing support from students to manage some of the content that switches out, whether that's pictures from school assemblies or monthly award celebrations or things of that nature. But it is gonna have a very different look and feel.
Can't wait to go into negotiations this summer, I'm just saying.
Are you?
With no money, yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't.
So this brings us to what we need, these changes? And I know this is gonna fluctuate by the time we actually pass something. We'll be able to get into more specifics once we have an
Yes.
actual dollar amount.
Yeah, this is super early for us to be coming here together now because generally we don't do it till after town council presentation and after the public hearing. And in
There's a
most
lot of
cases,
worry.
after it's actually approved.
Yeah, but there was a lot of worry this time.
Yeah, so, again, we understand that it's really broad and not super detailed, but as time passes, we'll detail it out for you.
Well, I will say the medical guarantee is a huge component, so.
We would have us cut 3 million more.
For the 3 million?
It doesn't matter, we go over, we go to the town anyways, it's not that much of a boon, except we don't have to worry about sending them a bill. We're doing it now, because there's no money in medical.
Yeah, but, I mean, you gotta be careful with that, don't you?
Well, because we were underfunded last year, what do we do?
No, but I'm just saying, we as a board, when we approve a budget, it's like a legal thing.
Yeah,
It's not to be taken lightly. And if you go over it, it potentially could be a problem.
that's why we have to get the attorney, I
Yeah.
think, to definitely
That's
look into
close
it more.
too, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
to make sure we're covered.
but I think every.
Well,
every
it's like if we
district is-
knowingly are approving something we know we don't have the funds for, it's a problem.
Yeah,
Well, I think this understanding was that we were getting a written contract from the town, that they were supplying this amount plus any overage, correct?
yes.
Like, there's gonna be a signed document,
Well, we've got to make sure that that's okay for us, because
Right.
with our responsibility, I
because
think.
that would mean that they are responsible for the overage as promised.
Right. If not, then
What if
$3
this year's
million
We are.
additional would have
No,
to
I'm
be
just
cut.
saying, what if this year's
Right.
over? You got a signed document?
Not for this year.
Oh,
But that's
okay.
why I think it's very important
Alright.
that for this agreement, they
But
will have to sign
I
it.
think you guys are known. The budget is a serious legal
Mm-hmm.
matter, and if you knowingly pass something that you know you don't have the funds for, it's a problem.
Yeah, well, this year we just
It's a
got more,
Which is why
Then
it's
what
good that we're
we-
making, I mean, unfortunately, there has to be cuts, obviously.
Yeah,
People
no,
are
I
making
agree
cuts
with
everywhere,
you.
in their lives, at home, like, this is not anything different. This is, I mean, you
This
can
isn't
only
us
get money
saying, oh,
from.
we have to, let's
Correct.
cut more.
Get over it.
Arbitrarily. We're not doing
right,
that.
no blood from a stone?
Yeah, yeah. I think the problem is a lot of people, and I mean, don't get offended, but I don't think a lot of people who make some of these decisions have ever had to live check to check or anything like that. So every single one of these changes will impact people, and that's what you have to look at. I mean,
Yeah. Because Tommy's right, we are responsible. If we say what we need to, what we have to fund our health line with, we have to allocate that, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, if we knowingly do something, it's a problem. It's one thing if a catastrophe hits you and we didn't know about. If we knowingly do
And
something.
we did have a huge influx in
It's different.
medical last year. It's not that it wasn't like poorly planned or anything like that.
No,
We
it's
had
just
a
an
huge-
influx, yeah.
Correct. We had a huge influx in medical costs, which
Yes.
can happen, obviously.
Every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, so
Correct.
we've notified, I believe our legal requirement per statute is to provide a written letter to the town to let them know of our situation, which was provided. And we've been having ongoing discussions with them since November about the monthly updates we receive about insurance. So they are aware, and I think we've met the statute requirement of the letter, for whatever that may be worth when time comes. But I think our requirements have been met of notification. They've acknowledged it and have been meeting with us to acknowledge the month-to-month fluctuations in preparation for where we are for next year's budget as well. So, but I guess how everything is written up for next budget will dictate when that letter for next year gets sent.
Because the state has to approve our budget too, right?
I don't think
Do
so.
they accept it? Do we have to hand it over to them?
No,
Nope,
We don't?
we do not.
We don't.
No.
no.
Any grants coming up? Special, anything out there? No?
Anything else being
Perkins
frozen
supplemental,
or
we
cut
just handed in a Perkins supplemental grant
federally?
for 50,000,
Did you just say federally?
but no, yeah. No.
We applied for some additional funding to the summer mental health grant that we received. That was a competitive grant at the beginning of the year, but
Yeah.
again, it's a small extension rather than.
And that's definitely gonna be a concern in the next year with everything being frozen and bigger government making decisions about what they wanna fund. I think the
Yeah.
next year is gonna be interesting to see.
Since the COVID funding, there hasn't been a lot of
Right.
additional funding coming out beyond that, which has dried up.
Mhm.
I think we need to think creatively and find a way to bring more money into the district, whether we have programs and bring students in from other towns that we'll receive funds for. I mean, obviously, I don't have the answers. I just think we need to start thinking, because this problem, especially with the costs of special education and the amount of special ed kids we have in town, I mean, it's just, it's gonna be worse every year.
But with the class size we have, how do we take students from other districts?
Well, I mean, it's not even something it's gonna have to be a well-thought-out, long plan, like over the next, 5
I
to
mean,
10 years.
I think that's obviously a great idea because revenue obviously funds our budget. But I just think every town is in the same situation.
Yeah.
And they don't have the money either.
To pay
I mean,
us.
even Guilford, even Madison, they don't have the money to fund these things, to send them here to get any.
But if they sent them
they don't
here,
have it.
really, they shouldn't be paying more than it costs to send the student.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't really increase revenue, because
No,
it would
it's
just
not.
pay for that student's educational cost per pupil. They wouldn't give us extra money towards what we need.
Like, it wouldn't be.
Just more kids, more responsibility for servicing.
Generating entities.
I think depends on what the,
We try to get like competitive with like rentals, things that are not gonna impact our classrooms, but maybe revamping the rentals will bring in a bunch of revenue and help offset the stipend portion, so that next budget.
I think that's something that we had discussed,
I mean,
We all discussed
talking
that,
about,
and
was
we're not gonna
reviewing
get much
all of
more
our rentals and our costs
revenue.
and maybe reevaluating those
Didn't we
And
just
then
do that?
the organization as a whole hits
Yeah,
a
we just
tipping
did it.
point. Think about it.
Yeah.
We provide mental health supports, we provide vision support, we provide dental support, we provide meal support, we provide, now we have to become a revenue generating entity?
Right.
I mean, where does the job of the school district end? It seems to just be getting bigger, bigger and bigger, and nothing ever comes off our plate, ever.
Well, I mean, the vision and dental, how long are we even gonna be able to sustain that? We only do so with grants, right?
Well, dental comes in through the school-based health centers, but again, there, it's time outside of the classroom for a kid to go sit in a dental chair and get their teeth cleaned away from instruction. But the hygiene is important for oral language development, there's a lot of catch-22s there, obviously, and if kids aren't healthy and feeling well and fed, they're not present for learning, so we're willing to do it. But now we've got to become a revenue-generating entity as well, on top of it all, and manage our organization, our school district, like a business. I mean, at some point, where do we draw the line?
Well, that seems to be the trend, though, unfortunately. I'm not I don't agree with it, but for some reason, that's the belief that you can,
Generate revenue?
generate revenue to do the,
Yeah.
I don't understand it, I don't agree with it.
I think it's not a popular choice, but this is why I think a lot of towns unfortunately do pay to play for sports. They kick that expense, which is immense, out to the families. We
Yeah.
have
That
not had to do
expense
that yet.
is over $200
Right.
in some districts per sport.
Yeah, it's
Per
a lot.
sport.
So if
per
you have a
student.
child that plays 3 sports,
They pay for uniforms too.
yep, yes, they do.
So you
Every
think about it
kid
in
brings
that
their own
respect, we've been
helmet, their
lucky that we
bat,
have
their,
not had to-
like, kids bring their own equipment too. So,
I mean, that's,
We're trying to do our best to keep that from happening.
Right.
I understand, but when we're looking at numbers like this and we're saying next year could be worse, these are things that
It
down the
might have to
road,
be an option.
unfortunately, those are things that need
instead of
to,
losing interventionists,
it's hard, but we need
We'd
to
have to
talk
do
about
pay
the
for
hard
play.
things.
Absolutely. I mean, we're the Board of Education as much as, my kids play sports. Sports
Same.
are super important.
Very
I mean,
important.
they're- I will never argue that, and I love that we don't pay here for the kids to play, and a lot of kids would not be playing if they had to pay. But also, that would we have to educate the kids first.
yeah, there's
so.
towns with well-funded budgets that do pay for play.
They do.
But they can afford to.
But they can afford
so
to.
to
Right,
speak.
but that would have to be.
a pay-for-play situation here would decimate it. You wouldn't have a lot of sports
100%.
teams at all.
You would have none.
You'd have,
You would
No.
not.
you would
The
have
numbers are
very
down
minimal.
so much
You would
now.
have to do
Oh
it
my
across the
gosh.
board where you would have
They
to
could
then
barely
do,
field a team.
Band.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then truthfully, some of these kids are only going to college or going to get paid to college for a sport or for,
band, musical.
in the band, yes, for music or,
I just think as a whole, these are things that
Right, the
not
same with
just
the medical
we need to
component.
focus on, but I think the public needs to be aware, these things all play into the budget as well. And we are
Correct.
doing our best to not restrict all these extracurriculars that we provide.
But we might not have a choice.
But unfortunately, when we're talking about digging into our social workers, our special educators, like,
Yes,
these are
it's a
huge
problem.
cuts we're making that these kids need. And when I make cuts at home, I don't cut the things that I need, I cut my extras.
Right? You still buy your burgers, but you get rid of the cookies.
I don't, I'm a vegetarian, but I get your point.
Doesn't have to buy that.
So it's like, it's not ideal, but we have to look at all those hard things, I think, too.
Let me know what that meeting is, 'cause I'm not coming. There'll be a riot here, just so you know. So let me know ahead of time which date that is, I'm busy that day.
Well, that's, it's currently not on the table. Obviously, the
Like, to
board
be
has the
clear, it
authority
is
to
not
put
on
it
the
on,
table.
the
Right.
board has the authority to put it on the table, but to be clear, thank you, Erica, that is not on the
Oh my
table right
God,
now.
my inbox is filling up as you speak.
I just think it needs to be understood that when we reevaluate what we're doing with the budget in general, everything has to be looked at.
Yeah, I don't think we could say anything's off the table. I don't think that would be fair to say.
I think we gotta consider our whole education model's wrong.
What do you mean?
We all talk about the money budget. Maybe what we're doing is outdated and we need a new structure for public ed.
I
You know,
agree.
there's things coming out like Chat GPT. I don't know. Are kids going to be that interested in writing and reading when they have, you know, that you can get a paper spit out of your phone, get in front of a microphone and read it? I don't know. Maybe the structure of public ed has to change. There's so many things that are different. I look at the young kids now, it's so different than it was 20 years ago.
Unfortunately, in Connecticut, we have no say.
What's that?
Unfortunately, in Connecticut with curriculum, we really don't have a say.
Yeah, we could do things here.
We could look at the way,
We could look at structural
yeah,
issues.
we could
like-
look at the way our classrooms are structured, our
Yeah.
buildings are structured.
I don't want to get into a huge theoretical discussion, but I'm in the camp, 7th and 8th grade should be in this building. Because then you can have your Spanish 4, because now you got 1,200 kids instead of 800. And maybe we have to think about things differently.
But I don't think 7, 8 would impact Spanish 4.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when you have more kids in one building, you could have more resources.
More kids of the same grade level too. The resources are combined.
Yes.
It's more,
Did we look at
It becomes
moving
much
7, 8
more
up here to
efficient.
see if
it
there would
does.
be a savings?
It does.
Did we run those numbers?
We discussed it a few months ago, and I think we were talking about having further discussions.
But our,
I think there were
our
concerns
structure
about
could
the
be
staffing.
wrong.
No, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And kids even today are, you know,
It's
going.
different.
Yeah.
It's way different.
AI is definitely going to play a role in many situations. It already is.
I looked at those kids that came up and spoke from the middle school last week. I was so intrigued. A couple of those kids read from that microphone. Wow, this kid could be a trial lawyer. I don't know if you noticed, one kid came up with no paper. He spoke off the
Yeah,
top
he
of
was
his
really good.
head. And I said to myself, wow, that's impressive. And, you know, everybody's different. Maybe we don't have the right structure anymore. Maybe we should be doing something different.
Maybe we should start, and everybody yell at me, but maybe the academy is, you know, not necessary anymore. Maybe with closing that, change with the different times, with busing, would that save us money? Could that be used as a
You guys, we've
different?
looked at that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, you know, the academy.
Luckily, we don't
like,
have to
had-
do that now.
Well, we had mentioned, but we should think about long-term, like what
Right, but
we need to
maybe-
do. Not now, not for this, but next year, the year after, like, we need a long-term 5 to 10-year plan, like, maybe we kind of talked about once, we could have school all year round. I think Erica said that was a cost savings for us, if we had school, you know, all year with breaks in between instead of the traditional way we do it now, where they have the summer off. Like, these are the kind of creative solutions.
I don't think it would be a cost save. I think it would be minimal increase if we did the days
I didn't,
correct.
not a cost savings, we would just redistribute the days over the 12-month calendar
Okay,
as
well-
opposed, yeah.
But
But not a cost savings.
Okay.
Yeah.
whatever different idea that maybe we think differently, maybe we, although it would cost us a lot of money up front, maybe we build a new school and have less buildings to run, you know, like, just
What is
5 to
the-
10-year plan, like, what's our plan? How are we gonna deal with this every year going forward?
Yeah.
We can't get our budget funded. I'm pretty sure the town's not gonna build a new school.
No, but if,
I'm with you on that.
but I think if the board made this a priority, say for next year, we need a plan.
A
Moving
sustainable
forward.
path.
We need a plan. We need to look at what we currently have, because we would love to have new buildings, but we know that's not going to happen. So look at what we have, and how can we make the best use of our space and our personnel to make it most effective for kids to learn.
And how
And
could we replicate our best?
there's a lot of
performing
great minds in
school
this
the
room. We
district?
could make this work.
What would approximately, because Ferrara is 3, 4, 5, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so hypothetically, if Ferrara, 3, 4, 5, then went to the academy, which turned into a K-5, and then we made 6, 7, 8 go to the middle school, and then we have one less building,
Yeah.
correct?
There's another option.
Yeah, continue.
But I'm saying, so that's the cost savings. I mean, you're talking about the UI here monthly is 30,000. You're saving on all the utilities. Essentially, you're not gonna save on staffing, obviously.
No.
But you're saving on building costs, building repairs. If we have a school that's continually breaking, I see plumbers at schools weekly fixing the same problem over and over. If one of our buildings that are not working, we need to transition it over. Let that one get brought back to whatever it needs to do, give it to the town, and then make a shift, get a regular K-5, have the academy, welcome back Carbone, K-5, and then all the Ferrara kids
Do we have enough space?
are redistributed. We would,
At
because
JMMS?
No.
7th and 8th from the middle
You wouldn't have
school,
enough
from
for the
That's what I'm
K-5
asking. Do we have
model.
enough room at
No,
JMMS to
You'd
do
have
that?
an-
K-5 to the academy.
You wouldn't have enough
With
room.
taking the 6, 7, and 8 and bringing it to the middle school would not be enough room.
They ran all
You have-
different,
you have-
redistribution strategies, and there is a contingency.
I think
that-
there are viable models that we can explore for the long term over the next year that can achieve.
But we don't know that
Everything.
you've done that. I know that you've looked at some things, but as a whole, I mean, that's what I think I'm hearing from
He
everyone.
has a backup plan in case we didn't get this money.
Of course he does. I understand that, but that's what I guess I'm hearing.
And we
should
could
look into
detail that out for you and put it in a longer 3
That
to
would be-
5-year
I just
plan
think that if there
of-
are
with
plans that are,
that.
there is
Yeah.
cost saving somewhere, truthfully, I don't know that we should wait until next year to do it, only because things happen. I don't know about anyone else, but if you don't have like a little bit of money saved, things happen, boilers break, where are we going with this? You know what I'm saying? And then what are we gonna do? Next year, here we are in March, and we're tapped already again? You know what I'm saying? We're just going into another cycle. You're never ahead. Like, there's no planning, there's never.
I agree with you, we need to get ahead.
So here's a
That's what I'm
crazy
saying.
idea.
You can't,
How
you're
about
gonna
this?
make that cut next year.
Can we ask you guys to give us a number of students per grade and a number, like a capacity for each building? And then we can all individually take a look at what we're looking at. Because without having that information.
Yeah, the
I don't
numbers
think we
per
can
grade
even
is
throw
on the
ideas
enrollment
around.
sheet.
Yeah, you have.
You have the
Can we
enrollment
share the
sheet.
link with the enrollment sheet?
So like our
Yeah.
building capacities.
Here's the thing.
So the building you can, it's safe to say,
Yeah.
all of the elementary and middle schools are pretty close to capacity, so whatever you see in that building column,
So however we shift it.
you can
keep
just,
it to that
just
number.
get to that.
Okay.
Correct. Say that again?
I don't think that's gonna be a
Bring the 70 up
viable
here.
scenario. There's
Great
others
idea.
that are, make much more sense.
It's a great idea.
I think you just got to look at different items for the 7 and 8 model here of the age group.
Developmentally.
Yeah. And being able to keep them separated for certain things.
Things.
I mean, it would be great.
There's
if
a lot of
some
the-
of the 8th graders could then take some of the, you know, Math Plus kids and the advanced reading, maybe they could be in with the freshmen, or that could be a cost savings, that kind of stuff.
You want to hear my next beef?
Oh, boy.
I don't understand how educators, Mary Ann, Tia, Erica, how we think we could shove 27 kids in one classroom of a variety of abilities and paint them all with the same brush. I just don't buy it.
We don't paint them with all
anyone
with the
thinks
same
that at
brush.
all.
We
We
don't.
do that.
Try not to, but.
No, we
I
don't.
like it.
You have to go to an elementary classroom.
I sat
There
in
is,
one for 6 weeks.
that was,
That's why I'm commenting
they
about
don't,
it.
they don't. In
They
in an
don't?
elementary classroom, there is so much differentiation
more
going
than
on
just that
all
one
day
classroom.
long.
I'm just saying,
Well, what
that
are you
class that I
suggesting?
sat in,
What are you suggesting exactly? Like, what, are you suggesting the solution to that? Like taking all the ESL kids and putting them in a classroom all by themselves?
Segregated.
I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking.
I'm seriously
No,
asking.
I'm seriously telling you, I'm a lay person, I don't know anything, I drive a truck for a living, but when I see a kid sitting over there that can't speak English, read English, and can't read Spanish, and he sits there all day and does absolutely nothing, I say to myself, what could we do better for that kid? Should we have an ESL school that you go there first, really have some abilities before you get in the general ed classroom? I don't know. But to have that person sit there every day and do nothing is wrong.
You know how you accomplish that? That's why Ferrara is a very successful school, because they only have 3 grades, and they have 3 or 4 teachers per grade. So you can move kids based on
There
their
you
ability
go.
for math, because they have more
So
resources.
you're not painting them with the same brush.
Like at the
in that
academy,
book.
2 teachers. You
There you
can't, you
go.
can't do it.
I totally agree with you.
You can't do it.
I totally
You can
agree
do
with
it,
that.
you can do it to, so if you had a school that only had 2 or 3 grades, you could accomplish way more,
I totally
way
agree
more.
with you.
because differentiation
And
would
you don't-
happen.
You don't have to worry about the half a social worker, because
No.
now you could afford a full social worker.
Well, because resources would, you would have more resources.
But, yeah, I sat in that classroom, and that's wrong.
Aren't all the classrooms the same ratio then?
No,
What do you mean same ratio?
Teacher to student.
no.
Academy used to be like, not like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
but
you look
how
at
many
your
years
enrollment
ago?
sheet, you'll be able to see they fall not too far apart. They're not too far apart.
yeah.
They are all similar now, because they've had to take people from the other schools and put them in the academy, so, no. Not really.
No, but it's how you use the resources you have in your school. It's very difficult when you have more grades, even K to 5 versus 2 or 3 grade levels. It's much easier with 2 or 3 grade levels versus, the academy has 8 grade levels. You know how difficult that is? It's extremely difficult. In a school with 2 or 3 grades, it makes it much easier, especially if the whole school has just 2 or 3 grades. Then you have more teachers teaching those grades, so you have teachers that have expertise teaching math. So maybe that teacher might teach 2 or 3 sections of math, and the teacher who's really good with language arts might teach 2 or 3 sections of language arts. That's how we need to use our staff better. And it's hard to do in a school with multiple grade levels and only 2 teachers per grade.
But they do that at the academy, don't they?
They only have 2 teachers per grade. It's very difficult. We did it a little bit. I don't know what they do now, but we did it a little bit.
It's not as it was. It's just not able to be.
Also, I mean, if, say, all the kindergartners, all the first graders, all the second graders in town went to one school, I mean, I think that would help in that, like, you would have expertise, like you said, teacher-wise, but I also think you would be able to group students better.
You would.
Like, high-performing students would be able to get, you know, what they need and,
Yep.
and excel, and the kids who, you would just have more opportunities for the students as, on more than one level.
And I think it's better utilization of staff, too.
Like district-wide K through 3, I don't think we have a building
saying
that.
I don't know, maybe there's a kindergarten and a first grade, I don't know, you'd have to look at the buildings and.
But I know that you guys.
You also
don't
want to
know.
minimize transition for kids. You don't want them moving
No.
every 2 years from school to
No.
school to school to school to school, right? Developmentally, that is not healthy.
We did
So
that. We did
you need
that.
to think about that strategically in terms of giving them a chance to settle into an educational community and feel connected to their environment without, you know, getting them all hyped up that they're moving schools again. So it's, you know, it's,
But if
you
it
have,
becomes
it's,
part
you
of
have to be thoughtful about it.
Yeah, but what if you took the whole school and moved the whole school? I mean, I know that's crazy, but you took the principal, you took the teachers, like, whatever, K1, 2, and
You mean
then
have the
you move
teachers
them to-
transition with the
to-
kids?
Yeah, I mean, once again, crazy ideas, I know, but.
And then they'd have to reset the older grades, go back into the newer kids, right? Is that what you're thinking? The teachers that were then teaching the older kids, if the other teachers are moving up to the older kids, where do those teachers go? They'd have to go back to the younger, right?
Right, and maybe they stay in the same building. I don't know, I'm just saying there's a crazy solution somewhere, and we just need to think creatively.
We need to explore it.
And,
We,
yeah,
we need to explore
right.
it when we're not on, at the, you know,
In
at a
the
budget.
ninth hour,
Yeah,
with 2 months of
exactly.
school
I
left.
don't know-
Exactly.
I don't know if you guys, one board meeting here, we got handwritten survey from students. Remember that?
Yes.
Like two meetings ago?
Yeah.
Climate.
From Memorgan School. Did you look at the differentiation in penmanship and spelling and grammar? It was unbelievable. And I sit there and I say to myself, I think those kids were 5th grade. I sit there and I say to myself, wow, how do you teach that variety of level, whatever you want to call it, grade level,
Differentiation.
in one room?
It's hard work.
It is hard work.
It's hard
crazy.
work.
What
Very,
teachers
very
do,
hard.
Because you can't just put
This is why it's so important to have paras in the classroom,
Yes.
especially in the
Yeah.
younger grades, because you need them to be able to help with that.
It's not,
I think.
what you're saying is you want like all, you can't put all kids with, I mean, I started long enough with kids, they separated different learning disabilities even sometimes, and then they put them, ooh.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yes, you can't
Yes.
do that.
Yes, you cannot do that. We don't do that at all. You differentiate instruction, you scaffold the instruction, but, you know,
And special ed does not need to be taken away
put aside.
anymore.
No.
Or
right,
put in this
No.
box that they're
Pushed,
in already.
no,
yes.
no.
Anymore. They need peers,
Yes.
They need to be in the
integrated
classroom.
in regular
Inclusion,
class.
they need
Yeah,
to be a
absolutely.
part of it, they belong
Absolutely.
in the classroom with everybody, they do. I agree. And,
Yeah, we're never gonna be able to have a small class size, that's why we just need a greater adult-to-kid ratio, that's the only
Yeah.
possibility.
true.
I think of getting a little closer to address that.
But I do like,
Because we don't do levels anymore, right?
no.
No.
We'll do it in high school, right?
Yeah, just
At
in
the
the
high
high
s-
school, but
yeah.
not like middle school or,
There's
Middle school does.
some leveling at the middle school.
there is some levels?
Because they have the teachers to do it.
I don't know, that, I was amazed.
Yeah,
I
wow.
gotta tell you, I've never been more, you said I would be, and you were right, but I'm just amazed at how that school's run. I'm amazed at how many kids the
They
administration
were disappointed they couldn't go
knows.
do math with the principal at
Oh my
lunch.
God, they were, the,
Which,
it's
Okay.
amazing what goes on in that environment, and the kids that struggle, the kids that excel, you couldn't tell who was who. You could not tell, and all I know is that the administration has a handle on and knows her students. She knows their names, she knows what they struggle with, she knows what they excel in. She invites them to meet with her at 6:30 in the morning if they need to do some improvements, so they can go out and play
baseball.
baseball, thank you. Baseball, she was connected in she doesn't delegate everything, maybe she should a little bit, she said, at one point, but the same goes for even the security people,
Oh,
are,
yeah.
they're just, you could see it.
Custodians.
There's a new teacher there, she was like amazing, already fitting in, it was her first day, oh my God, I gotta check back in. It's just, you could just tell the
It was
environment.
impressive, it was.
It was the quietest school I've been
I'm
in.
glad you had such a great
Middle school.
experience. I would encourage board members to get into as many schools as you
Oh, I'm
possibly
gonna go-
can, especially
It's
if you're
not
gonna
just
be
what you
sitting
hear.
here
I mean,
looking
when
at
you were there,
reconfiguring or closing schools. You need to see, hear, witness, observe, and understand what is going on inside our schools. And you can start by visiting Ferrara School next week. Adam, would you like to share the invitation?
Absolutely, I wanted to follow up because we've been exploring some social studies materials within Free Journeys. So I do have an experience set up either next Tuesday or Wednesday from 1 to 3. It's an opportunity to see that school because 4th grade, this is on their second inquiry, their pilot, and then also be able to see another grade level, 3rd grade. They've been exploring economic choices and they're in their taking action phase. A big part of this is an inquiry model that supports students to take their learning and to think about impact out into greater.
And that's at Ferrara?
Yeah, that's it for Aurora. So if you're interested, I would just ask you to reach out to me.
I'm
this
coming.
week so that I can notify.
There, there's my response, I'll be there. 1 o'clock,
Yeah.
What day though?
the 9th.
So Tuesday or Wednesday, I'd love to narrow it down.
I'm coming Wednesday.
Oh, I can't do Wednesday.
We could do 2 if need be. Yeah. So if Tuesday.
Unless it was earlier.
Well, I'll be there
I can't do later on Wednesday.
I think that I hate to have people redistribute their instructional blocks.
Yeah,
So
okay.
What I could do, Marianne, is are you available Tuesday?
I am. I am. Tuesday I can do. I can't do Wednesday.
An opportunity
Okay.
for trade earlier in the day.
Okay.
When does that work?
Later in the day on Tuesday?
You said earlier in the day?
I could do earlier in the day on Wednesday, or, wait a minute, let me just see. Let me just see if I can for sure.
I could also follow up the other.
I was impressed with what Darcy Doyle did, and had all those groups with parents involved and everybody, parents, teachers, and we saw some of those people working with the kids. I can't even, it was.
Even lunch was well behaved.
What
Everybody
lunch
was like,
Did she roll her game cart in there?
They ran to the lunch line because they were hungry and they wanted to get, to eat.
Yeah,
That was the
yeah.
biggest problem. And guess what? Whoever runs come all the way back
Yeah.
and try it again, but,
Yeah.
and they did.
She walks the walk, she talks the talk. She's an instructional leader, and like when you walk in the building, you can just feel it. And you watch just the natural interactions
Yeah.
between the students and the administration, and you could tell and the teachers,
They're
there's
real.
deep connections there.
With the
I was gonna
teachers
say,
and,
we were at the, parent-teacher conference, like, I think we saw a lot of like that, just that natural flow with her, so.
it was really, really
Yeah.
impressive.
She does have a very good rapport with parents too, I think.
Excellent,
yeah.
It was
excellent.
hard for her in the
It's not-
beginning because it is for anybody, right?
Well, she was changing things,
Yes, the culture
operationally
changed.
and, trying to build a positive school culture and climate and reshifting some of the expectations that, for staff and students, and that is difficult. Yeah. What?
I'm sorry, it was quiet. Transitions. You
Yeah.
go up the different staircases, they know where they belong. And if you're trying to sneak up one of them, it's like.
She's like,
you
no,
just
no, no,
wanted to
turn it
come
back
on,
around.
Turn around, go the one
Yeah.
that's got more room for you to go up the stairs, and they just did. They love her.
They do.
Those kids know her. She knows them.
Yeah.
They respect her.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
I volunteer at, during the dances, and she walks into the gym, and, they're quiet. They just sit down, they pay attention, even in the building. When I've done the book sale or whatever, it's
You
very
could see it.
orderly. Yeah, everything, they respect her, they behave. The school is quiet, like you said. It's clean, like
Oh my God,
they
yeah.
painted, like
I-
the stuff on the walls. It's very, like, it's
Unbelievable. I always said that about that
so
school. It's
nice.
always clean. Many of the
It's,
schools.
in reality, it's very different than the picture many paint.
yeah. No, I think they do a great job.
With one of the hardest developmental ages
Oh,
throughout the
yeah.
progression of the
Oh my God,
institution. Yeah.
Middle school.
And guess who, like, right near the office is all the 8th graders. That's the best thing you could possibly do.
You might even
I
catch
love
her
it.
on the dance floor at some of those
Oh,
dances.
Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, Friday night, there's a dance.
You coming, Erica?
Oh, she'll need an nap for
Son
that.
did ask-
I hope.
He
Um,
said he wanted to go,
I'll
but.
bring
Also-
the neon bracelet.
Also, just to let the board know, tomorrow is Para Appreciation Day tomorrow. So if you run into a para educator in district or somewhere else, we're going to be showing them some gratitude for their dedication, hard work, and supporting students, staff, and families across the district. And finally, Michelle, are we having a meeting on April 8th?
I won't be here.
Okay.
So, Tia? And
We don't have a
Agenda
tremendous
items?
amount of agenda items. I have one small head lice policy.
And we'll all be together, I think, on the 9th, right, for our budget? Is it the 9th?
We'll be on the 9th and the 10th at Town Council, yes.
Okay, so then when,
I say we cancel that. Well, I'm not gonna be here, so you know what, I'm not gonna say it. But if we have nothing on the
do we have
agenda,
one during vacation week?
No. There is one the following week.
no, we
I
canceled
can't
it.
finalize the date.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
we
that was
don't-
canceled.
It's the public comment night from the town switched our.
RJ
night
said
to
they
our
might have
board
switched
meeting
it back.
Yeah, I don't know.
What?
We're not
I'm
sure.
trying to find out.
We were trying to find out.
I think a few different.
night. What, right after we
departments
canceled ours?
I think a few different departments were changed. I think there was issues.
Literally, because that'd be the same day, or the day after we cancel our meeting, they switch the meeting. It's good.
So
Wednesday
if it's
night is
changed,
the
maybe we
town
can put that
council?
Meeting back on.
But that,
We
well, it'll
present
be
on the
nice
9th?
now.
But it's
The
during
9th?
vacation
But no,
week.
it'll.
What
no,
time?
22nd.
No, it's the 22nd.
I can,
But I'm not sure, now that it's been officially
Email me?
canceled, it would have to be handled as a special meeting.
Right.
Regardless.
Which we can do.
Yeah, it just means that we can't
See you in
add
May.
anything to the
See you in
agenda.
May.
I mean, that's really,
And no
in,
public comment.
Usually there's no public.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. But we could,
Nobody comes,
Send your correspondence.
so.
I'll be happy to read
Chris
them
is
in.
here. From now on, Chris, if no one talks, you have to get up and say something.
So does anybody have any items for the 8th No? Okay.
Won't they?
All right,
That's what-
I'll touch base with, let me just see what goes on tomorrow, talk to my cabinet members, and then I'll touch base with you and Tia, and, you know, we'll either hold it or cancel it.
But I, just everyone think to try to be there on the 9th and 10th as we present our budget to the town if possible.
The 10th too?
The 10th
is
is
questions.
questions.
Oh,
That's the big one.
oh, it is? All right.
Questions.
We will present what we presented to the board on the 9th with our regular request, and then we go back on the 10th to answer questions.
Okay.
Is that 7 o'clock, is that right?
Yes.
It
Now,
is 7
if
o'clock?
It's supposed to be.
If any of this,
We're the only meeting.
it'd be after then that we get details about things
Yes.
like this, if we have,
Yes.
depending on what gets.
Yeah, we, like Art said, we don't want to do hysteria, we don't
Correct.
want to
No,
make
I
anyone
get
panic.
that, right. But in all fairness, you know, we're all saying, get creative, and we are, I agree, we have to. But you guys have gone through a lot of scenarios, so for next year, you know, we can just make sure we start.
We can
Yeah.
definitely,
We can share
we
what we
can
have,
definitely
yeah.
share, once this is past us, for next steps on how to move forward. Yes.
RJ's been
When it-
great with putting together.
Maybe in the summer when things are quieter.
To keep us,
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with a $5 million hold-a-thon, you kind of look at every stone to turn over and explore. So we've had many scenarios. We can definitely bring them here when it's,
that are kind of planned out with.
yeah,
everything
strategic
that-
planning that have been discussed to kind of see if it works, if it doesn't work, and next steps. We can definitely do that at a later point for the subsequent year, once we pass here, and put some proper planning and
Yeah.
timelines in place.
And it's good to know, like, the only, like, job loss really is just people who are retiring. I mean, our current staff, they might have to move around, but we're not gonna really need to do layoffs, I don't believe, right?
Hopefully, depending on the
Hopefully,
retirement.
I think probably the most, you know, unpredictable line is that staffing changes line.
All right, maybe some.
So, I don't know. I think it depends on what we receive in terms of information, retirements, resignations, and what happens over the next couple months.
But it's just like, I mean, even though we're not, getting at not having to remove anyone, we still wouldn't be replacing the individuals.
Correct.
Which,
Could
Correct,
be problematic.
it
correct.
isn't gonna impact anyone's salary, but it's gonna impact the kids. That's
Correct.
Yeah.
just what I'm.
Yeah.
Unless it's a
Yeah.
position where someone's retiring and we do have to refill the position, in which case we have
Correct.
to look elsewhere for,
And sometimes we're able to do
Shifting.
that at a lower salary, but sometimes
Sometimes not.
we're not. Yeah,
Especially with the shortage area, you gotta take
yeah.
what you could hopefully get.
So, thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.